Well, the leader of the National Citizens Alliance is not at all happy with his reception on a recent visit here to Nova Scotia. They were banned from any future Apple Blossom Festival parades, turned away from potential sites for a town hall, and assaulted during an attempted rally at Victoria Park here in Halifax. Alliance leader Stephen Garvey says they were assaulted by what he calls liberal leftist thugs, and he wants to expose what he says is the leftist radical extremism here in Halifax and throughout Nova Scotia. Stephen Garvey joins me on the phone here this morning. Mr. Garvey, good morning to you.
Yeah, thank you, Rick, for having me on to deal with these fairly serious issues.
Well, thank you for joining us here today. Where are you, by the way, right now?
I'm in Calgary, Alberta right now.
All right, is that your home base, is it?
Yes, it is.
All right. So when you say you were assaulted by liberal leftist thugs and you want to expose the leftist radical extremism in the city, explain, please.
Well, it started with the Apple Blossom Parade. We were accused of doing things, saying things that were being portrayed as hate, but, none of the stuff he said was hateful. And apparently there was a Liberal MP behind that. That's what our sources tell us. And he pressured the Apple Blossom board to impose a lifetime ban. We can't confirm that 100%, but that's what our sources tell us. And then, as you stated, we tried to set up a private venues in Halifax, and we were denied 3 times. And then it led to us going to Victoria Park, which is a public meeting space, and we were assaulted, but also robbed. And these were leftists there, and they were intolerant, hateful, violent towards us. That's unacceptable.
But perhaps, the impression that people have about the National Citizens Alliance is that you're a white supremacist group, basically, and that's why you're not really welcomed here.
That is a complete lie. That is a complete lie, Rick. Our message at the Apple Blossom Parade was low, less taxation, small, efficient government of, by, for the people, and protect our culture, our identity, our heritage. Those were our main slogans that we were using.
So you're not a racist group.
We're 100% against any form of racism and supremacy.
Why do you think?
It's actually in one of our policies.
Why do you think people have
zero tolerance?
Why do you think people have the wrong impression then, Stephen?
Well, it's coming from the media. It's also coming from the federal government. We have a government that calls people racist who go against what they're saying. And it's coming from the media, which is labeling us, because we're going against, I guess, what the corporate globalists in this country want to push. So anyone who goes against the status quo is labeled and vilified. Because right now the government is about big government, high broad taxes, top-down governments, mass immigration. And we're opposed to all of them.
So you don't mind that if people are minorities of color, you don't mind they're okay to come to this country?
As long as they're integrating and they don't violate our liberties, civil rights, we have no issue. But if they're coming here to push their beliefs and values that are counter to our liberties and civil rights, we have an issue.
So you're against, again, what the policy of the government is to welcome people from other countries, other cultures, and allow them to practice their cultures, their religions in this country. You're opposed to that?
We have no issue with that. But if they're radical extremists, we have an issue. We don't want radical extremists in our country. And I'm talking about, there could be people wanting to push Sharia. There could be some other ideologies that they're pushing, right? So that's what we're against.
Your website says that you describe yourself as, quote, embracing the new while standing up for Canada's traditional identity, heritage, and cultural norms. Maybe that's why people are perhaps somewhat confused about whether or not you're a supremacist group or not.
Well, what is wrong with loving your country, protecting, guarding over your homeland? We have an identity, we have a heritage that's important to who we are, and we have cultural norms. These define us as Canadians. Why should we just let other people in our country and displace everything we stand for.
What?
We oppose that. We think our identity, our culture, heritage means something. But we have a federal government, we have a prime minister, in fact, that says he doesn't know what our identity is, or our heritage, or our culture. He says we're a post-national state. Rick, that's what's going on. We oppose that globalist agenda. It's turning Canada into a globalist village. We're all going to be divided. We're going to have no Canadian identity, heritage, cultural norms. We're going to have no distinct values and beliefs.
I'm looking at a quote here from a professor at a university here in the region, and he says, what has to be asked is, when these groups like yours say Canadian heritage, what do they really mean? Can you answer that question?
We're talking about pre-Confederation, the values, the heritage of Canada, the structure of Canada, the institutions that created this beautiful country we have.
But it sounds like you're talking about white heritage and white culture and nothing but.
Well, in fact, a lot of it is Euro-Canadians, because they're the ones that founded Canada.
Didn't your ancestors immigrate?
Pardon me?
Didn't your ancestors immigrate to this country?
Yes, they did.
All right.
But I encourage you to look up Professor Duchesne from the University of New Brunswick. He's done a lot of important work on this, and he says there's a myth in our society that in pre-Confederation that these were immigrants coming to Canada, when in fact they were settlers and pioneers. And because of the high fertility rates, you can make a strong case that these first Canadians became indigenous to this land, Canada.
So Aboriginals, you would put Aboriginals and African Canadians or African Nova Scotians, they would all be part of Canada's heritage.
Yes.
So that's not an issue as far as you're concerned. But then again, I have to ask, why do people think you're a white supremacist group?
This is just coming from the federal government and the mainstream media. They are afraid of any group that goes against their globalist agenda, which includes open borders, mass immigration, attack on Euro-Canadians, attack on Canadian nationalism, any sense of pride in your country. They are globalists, and they will attack anyone who goes against that agenda.
But you were at one time, Stephen, if I'm not mistaken, a member of the Worldwide Coalition Against Islam, and were involved in demonstrations as part of that group.
That is a complete lie. We're actually fighting CBC. That's another lie by the mainstream media. I was never a member of the WCAI, ever. Rick?
Yeah, okay.
That's just another lie that's being perpetuated.
Well, I'm glad that you're here to clarify this for us here.
Well, I tried with CBC, and they don't want to listen. Now we're going to talk to a lawyer about it.
So you were never part of any protest against immigrants from Islamic countries?
I was part of a number of protests against M103, which I personally do not support, and our party does not support. That violates our fundamental freedoms of free speech.
So will you come back to Nova Scotia anytime soon, Stephen Garvey?
Very soon. We have a great number of Maritimers who are stepping up, who support our agenda. So we're working on plans to come back.
And you do say, and I read somewhere where you also are hoping or planning to run candidates in the next federal election. Where would you run those candidates?
Oh, we're going to run them. We're going to run them across the country. We have a number of candidates already for the Maritimes. In fact, I'm planning to run in the Maritimes because we need to take on this intolerant, this top-down, intolerant, almost fascist ideology that's pervasive in the Maritimes and other parts of the country, where there's zero tolerance for anyone who disagrees with the status quo.
I can ask you about the Victoria Park incident. Was there not police on hand for that?
They came later on. We came early to set up, and these, the radical left were already there. They actually assaulted a Canadian veteran of 3 tours. They assaulted a Canadian Métis who were both members of the NCA, and they robbed from us property, and we filed police reports. We backed off. We're not there to fight. We were there just to have a discussion and share our ideas. And these people are thugs. They're intolerant, and we got to decide what type of society we want to live in. Why is there so much intolerance? And I'll tell you this, Rick, you might want to do something on this. In Halifax, maybe it's claim to fame. That's where the Islamic Party of Canada formed. And that party its main objective is to implement Sharia in Canada. Can you believe that?
Well, and again,
Halifax.
I doubt that.
You better look them up because they are a real force, and they're in Halifax.
Well,
that's where they were founded. Can you believe it?
I don't know if I'll believe it or not, but I do know that I don't believe that Sharia law will be any part of Canadian law anytime in the future. So that's my belief anyway.
Well, do you want those type of people coming to our country?
Those type of people. See, this is where you get to the inference, perhaps, that you are a racist or you're a white supremacist. When you
Because we don't want people coming here who have contempt for our liberties and civil rights, who oppress women, who oppress homosexuals. Rick, where's your backbone, man?
I appreciate your time here this morning.
Why did you defend that?
Well, I'm not defending. I'm just simply looking for answers from you on what your views are on these issues here.
Makes sense. We don't want radical extremists coming to our country, like the Edmonton terrorists that came in under the previous government.
Stephen, I do have to run. I appreciate you.
Thank you, Rick.
I appreciate
you for the opportunity.
Not a problem. Have a good day. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Stephen Garvey is his name with the National Citizens Alliance. Perhaps we'll hear your thoughts on that coming up next hour. An open hour between 10 and 11 here this morning. 9:46. We'll be back with more right after this.
You're listening to The Rick Howe Show, where Halifax